It's an endless barrage. Mortars, they shake the earth, man.
They believe they're holy warriors.
They started shooting at us from all directions.
But there's nothing holy about them.
If a girl refused sex, they would rape her.
Tonight, the evil known as ISIS.
They tied them to a chair, threw water on their bodies, and attached electrical cables to them.
In this house right here, 18 members of the family were killed. Over there, 30.
Can they be stopped?
To defeat them is very possible.
And is America doing enough?
How do America's other Arab allies view U.S. leadership?
Difficult questions.
Fox News reporting Unholy War, the March of ISIS. From Cairo, Egypt, Brett Baer.
We're coming to you from the presidential palace in Cairo. A year ago, much of the world had never heard of ISIS, and it was dismissed by President Obama as the JV team. But now the terrorist army has come to dominate the news with its brutality. This hour, we're going to show you ISIS as very few have seen it, up close. The damage it has wrought to families, villages, a whole region that simply was in the wrong place with the wrong beliefs. We'll also talk exclusively with one world leader who has dared to challenge Islamic terror and stand up to it, even daring to call it by its name. First, though, we go to northern Iraq and a small village that was visited by evil, a place called Kocho. August 15th, it was decision day for the people of Kocho village, 10 miles south of Sinjar Mountain, a critical crossroads and ancient landmark in northern Iraq.
ISIS surrounded the whole village.
ISIS had given Kocho villagers like Ali an ultimatum: convert to Islam or lose all their belongings and join other refugees who had fled to Mount Sinjar in the past few weeks.
ISIS came with a bulldozer and about 40 cars armed with heavy weapons. They made a circle with cars.
Ali's cousin Dakil lived in Kocho. Dakil was out of town, but his wife and children were there.
They collected everyone together in the school building.
Dakil's wife, Gulay, remembers seeing the ISIS fighters come that day.
I was scared. We were very scared when we saw them.
She and Ali were marched to the local elementary school.
The school had two main corridors, east and west. They collected all the men in the east corridor and the women in the west corridor.
ISIS then took money and mobile phones from the men and the keys to their family cars. They took jewelry and gold from the women.
ISIS took everything from us.
Next, the men were divided into groups. They brought Ali's group outside to a dried-up irrigation ditch, just like ISIS did to Iraqi army POWs weeks before.
We were deceived. We had no way to escape. They asked us all to stand in the middle of the ditch, put our heads down, and stay there. I heard them speaking in Arabic, saying Allahu Akbar and Islamic State. About 25 fighters were surrounding us, and then they started shooting at us from all directions.
He was shot in the back and arm.
At first, they just shot at everyone from all around and killed most of the people. Second time, they went over, and those who were sighing and were in pain, they would find them and kill them. They would shoot at their head.
Ali passed out from the pain and bleeding.
When I became aware again, I called out to see who was alive and had gotten out before me.
He was one of just 3 male survivors in what would become known as the Kocho Massacre. ISIS killed an estimated 500 men that day. Ali's cousin Dakil was outside of Kocho, but ISIS was all around the area, and they captured him.
ISIS kidnapped me for 17 days.
He escaped from captivity at night when his guards were sleeping, but once he was free, he made a horrible discovery.
My sister was taken captive with my wife. They took about 700 women and children in Kocho village.
They took everyone that we cared about. They took all our dears. For a father, a man, his wife is dear to him. His daughters, his sons, family, father, friends, his tribe. They took everything from us.
Ava, a Kocho villager, newly married and pregnant, was caring for her sick mother, so she couldn't escape.
My mother was crying when they took my father. We asked them, "Where are the men? What did you do to them?" They said men are under Islamic State now, and they will be fine.
Ava and the women were loaded onto buses and taken to Syria to be sold as slaves.
The buyers would check the women. The buyers would ask them to remove their scarf. They would check their hair and their teeth. And they would ask their age, and if they hadn't had children, they would be taken as wives. And those that were sick or not in a good situation, they would be taken as servants.
Ava also saw what happened to women who didn't go along with what ISIS wanted.
Women were asked to convert to Islam, but they resisted and said, "No, we are Yazidis. It is forbidden in our religion to convert to another religion." So they tied them to a chair, threw water on their bodies, and attached electrical cables to them. Some of the women who were tortured a lot would cut their wrists and commit suicide. Others would suffocate themselves with blankets.
Because Ava was pregnant, she was not acceptable for sale. To protect herself, she also pretended to be deaf and mute. ISIS took her to a building with a makeshift sign, Hospital of the Islamic State, written on the front. She spent the next 50 days in a dark room in the basement.
We asked the women with us what happened to their babies, and they told us they had been taken away. They were separating women from their babies to stop them from escaping.
After about 7 weeks in captivity, she gave birth. She had already gone through forced separation from her husband. Now, ISIS was ready to strip away her child.
Someone who was in charge of the ISIS fighters came to me and said, "I will take you myself. You can't take care of your child, and I will put you in an asylum and give your baby to another family."
The ISIS fighter took her to an apartment. If she wanted to keep her baby boy, it was now or never.
He told me he had something to do, and that when he came back, he would take the baby and put me in an asylum. Then he asked me by sign language if we needed anything to eat, and I kept silent.
As soon as he left, Ava took a knife and used it to pry open the door and escape. Luckily, she was able to find a house nearby that would take her in.
I spoke with my husband through the internet. Then I told him I was in a friendly man's house and gave his number to my husband, and we spoke on the phone. The Arab man told my husband, "Don't worry, I will take care of her as my daughter." After 3 days in their house, they helped me escape with a burqa and his daughter's ID.
Her husband paid $4,000 to get her out of ISIS territory. The Islamic State insists that its actions are neither random nor barbaric. In fact, the group published guidelines for what it called the, quote, Sinjar operations. The guidelines state, quote, enslaving the families of the infidels and taking their women as concubines is a firmly established aspect of the Sharia.
It has been the tradition since the early Islamic conquest. When they took over certain areas, they have certain rules.
Hassan is an analyst at a research center in Abu Dhabi who has made a study of the rise of the Islamic State.
I think there is a tendency among people, I think it's mostly in the West, to say that ISIS has nothing to do with Islam. And I think that's absolutely false. ISIS justifies everything, every act it conducts, it carries out through Islamic traditions.
That blind adherence to tradition meant anguish for Dakhil and Ali, whose loved ones were still held by ISIS.
My feeling was, I will never ever see them again at home.
These people took the smile from our lips. They took all our happiness.